Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another session of Parallel Barking. My name is Larry Backer, Woof Woof, and I'm here with my puppy.
Ariana Backer, bark bark.
Yay. Today, we are going to talk about sustainability. And we're going to talk about the human foibles of sustainability.
Specifically, we'll be talking about trees.
Tree cutters.
Tree cutters, not tree huggers. Tree cutters.
Tree cutters, and I'm just going to lose it today. All right, so tree cutters, and we know that we missed Arbor Day, but indeed this occurred. There's a certain symmetry. The act at issue occurred in the months before Arbor Day in April, and we are going to be talking about it because the hearing was one of the hearings was occurred fairly recently,
Just recently, yeah.
Right, a couple of months after Arbor Day. So here's what's going on. And this is what makes this interesting. So you've got a kind, and of course, these are our favorite kind of stories, clueless, privileged people who believe that the sun and moon fall somewhere, that nothing exists unless they can see it, feel it, taste it, or own it.
The rule is that if you have a certain amount of money, that's what happens.
No, if you feel like you have a certain amount of money.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You don't even really have to have it.
Right. So it doesn't mean that you can't sneak off to the Walmart to buy your bread and milk, but it does mean that you have to have at least some of the minimum accoutrement of privilege. And the biggest accoutrement of privilege is a certain kind of arrogance.
Indifference.
Well, yeah, but
to your other humans.
You can be the judge. So, okay, so we have this cool dude, no names, but we have the story and you'll be able to find it. And of course, we do this in the heart of a certain sort of ideologically grounded privilege, which in this case has actually been perverted. But that grand capital of a certain kind of privilege, northern New Jersey. And we have a homeowner who sits atop a mountain below which live the despicables, or at least those despicables who were able to claw their way up through hourly wages sufficiently enough to own plebeian style houses down they call it a mountain, but of course everything is relative.
Hill.
It's a hill. But apparently this person or this family owns 7 acres of a beautiful hilltop, which, but for the trees, and not his trees, his neighbor's trees, would afford a glorious view of the sun silhouetting that crown jewel of America, the Manhattan skyline. And what better to enhance? Apparently, this person's property is listed or has been sold for, or at least one of these web-based companies has decreed that the house is worth $1,780,000. And I don't know how that ranks in New Jersey. I suspect that that they're closer to the despicables than to the.
I think so too.
Gold.
I think so too.
Right, the solid gold faucet set. But the house is big and comfy, at least from the pictures. I have no idea, and I have no idea about these people other than there's this spectacular view, but for the trees, and not his trees, because he could go, well, actually, he can't do this either, but they're trees. And so like most people with privilege, they say, aha, I have a want, I have a need. My want and my need is to be able to see the glorious crown that are the buildings of Manhattan.
The New York City skyline. Everybody wants it.
We're using the language of the realtors. Bathed in the glory of the sun coming up from the east, except for my stupid neighbor and his trees. So what does he do? He hires a couple of people or a couple of companies. It's not clear how many in the story.
I think it was he hired one company and then the company hired somebody else out to do it.
All right, the usual stuff. It's why have one person do it when you can have 4 and you spread the wealth.
Delegation. That's also in this privilege.
There was a reason, because the property on which the trees were located were relatively inaccessible, but they managed with their trusty little tree cutters to come in, and they cut down 32 trees in the neighbor's property.
Yes, trespassing. He also trespassed. He like completely
No. There
trespassed.
is no trespass when what you're doing is for your own greater glory.
Oh, I
Greater
keep on
glory of
forgetting.
your views from your windows, especially when that greater glory is the crown, that are those outrageously expensive high-rise buildings in Manhattan.
So are we saying that this is just Machiavellian
No,
and
we're saying that it's certainly emblematic of the times and of a certain class of people.
mm,
We're being essentialists. This person or this family may have their own particular neuroses or their own particular ways of looking at the world, which may be unique to them. God bless them. As the Irish say, no one else will. But there you go. So he winds up cutting down these 32 trees. And everyone said, oh my God, this is terrible. But never fear. And that's what makes the story really interesting. He cuts down the 32 trees. There is an ordinance in this. It's Kinnelon, New Jersey. There's an ordinance in Kinnelon, New Jersey, and it is New Jersey. So in most of these places, there's going to be an ordinance about everything. But there is an ordinance, Chapter 186, a tree removal. We've read it. Which says you can't, and it is a sustainability-based tree ordinance, and quite rightly so. You don't want to cut trees down. You're going to increase pollutants, but you're also going to increase temperature.
but what is the ordinance? What is the ordinance?
The ordinance says you can't cut these trees down without a permit. Permits are going to be sparingly given in light of, the usual balance.
In light of sustainability
right, blah, blah, blah. And if you go ahead and you raise your middle finger in the direction of the ordinance and the municipality and this law, then you will have breached it, and the breaching of it the violation is section 186-13. Of course, it's 13 in the
so lucky or unlucky.
Right. Assuming that there was that you removed illegal trees subject to a permit, that is, you violated the permit automatically disappears. But in any case, any person violating any provision of the chapter shall, upon conviction, be subject to a minimum fine of $100 up to $1,000 per tree. So this person cuts 32 trees down. He's got $1,780,000 property that he may or may not sell, but he certainly thinks, and this is also a sense of we are valuing privilege, right?
Yes.
Even if he's assessed the maximum fine, the valuation of this privilege to go into his neighbor's property and cut down 32 trees would be no more than he thinks $32,000.
Yes, this was his conclusion, and the reason why he decided to go ahead and cut all these trees without going through the proper channels.
I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But anyway, so, we don't know what is going on in people's heads, but, we know what we might be thinking if we try to put ourselves in their shoes, and maybe people.
Everybody knows. Come on.
Right, I mean, yeah, it goes 32,000. What's 32,000? We all saw the White Lotus. Rich people can afford to be scammed by $32,000 for some people is not a whole lot of money. For other people, it can be significantly more money, but apparently not for him. 32,000. No problem. Except.
But what happened? But what really happened?
Except, wait. Except. The dude, this is a problem with people who aren't lawyers, and actually it's a problem with my law students too. You read a provision in a statute and then you forget to read the next one. So if you only read 186.13, it says, okay, so you're going to be charged. If he's lucky, he's only going to be charged $100 per tree. That's $3,200. If he's unlucky, he's going to be charged $1,000 per tree, and that's $32,000. Maybe he can negotiate, and whatever it is, the maximum is $32,000. You probably get out cheaper. Right, but he failed to read 186.14, which says anyone who's convicted right, who incurs the penalties under 186.13 by removing or otherwise destroying trees, is required to replace the trees with another of a like or superior species as defined, because this is New Jersey and they're all lawyers who went to good schools. There's a definition of replacement trees, including size, caliper, and all of this on the property from which they were removed. And this is where it gets interesting, because apparently it was easy to remove them. And not only do you have to replace them, but you have to guarantee, which means you have to water and fertilize and take care of them against insects for 2 years.
Yes.
Right. So you got to replace all the trees and you got to guarantee them and take care of them for 2 years.
Yes, ensure their viability for at least that long.
But
otherwise, then what happens, I wonder?
Right. But here's the rub. Here's the rub. The problem is that in order to get that view, to cut down those trees, you had to go to a very inaccessible part of the neighbor's property. In order to comply with 186.14, assuming you get fined under 186.13, you're going to have to build an access road. And right now, apparently, the going bid for that access road is $1.5 million. He's got no, assuming this thing goes in a particular way, he may have really hit the Darwin Award jackpot here, at least financially, because in addition to the maximum $32,000 fine, he may have to blow $1.5 million to build the access road, plus buy the trees, plus pay, because this person is not going to dirty his hands or the family's hands, likely, although at these prices, maybe they will. They're just going to have to extend their hoses far enough. They're going to have to water and take care of these trees for 2 years. Well, and that has everyone buzzing.
Well, which is great. It's fabulous. I mean, he had the tree cutters climb a fence that was clearly marking the property line.
What's a property line among friends? Ask Mr. Putin.
Yeah. I don't think the neighbor thinks they're friends.
If the neighbor is Ukraine and this family is Russia, what's a fence? What's a property line? Again, privilege. But so part of what we're seeing here is the enormity of privilege in the way in which it kind of shuts down your mind, even in the face of law, and even in the face of what you would otherwise think would be a generally applicable rule, which is you really don't go on your neighbor's property unless you get permission, and you certainly don't go on your neighbor's property to cut a bunch of stuff down merely because it enhances your greater glory or your self-actualization or your ability to spend a couple of minutes having a beer and looking at the glory. Oh, well, maybe he does have a beer in the morning. Guinness, which is traditionally the breakfast beer of choice, right? And he
But he's actually not the only one who faces a fine. The 2 contractors hired by the man may also be fined an additional $400,000.
And of course, what are these guys going to do? Or guys, or male, female, mixed gender, non-gender, fairy folk, whatever they are. What are they likely to do?
Okay, there are proper pronouns to use. They,
but
them.
I don't know what is appropriate for them. So
they is perfect.
Whatever it is, right. Anyway, so what are they likely to do? Each of them.
Oh, fight it in court.
No, are you kidding? I'm just going to declare bankruptcy, sell all my stuff, reincorporate as a new corporation, and then...
Well, that would be the smart thing to do, but do you actually think they're going to do that?
After all of this publicity, someone is going
to perhaps
to do all of this stuff. So, I mean, there's a likelihood that they would do this, but yeah, no, they're facing fines. And who knows whether there's joint and several liability. There's a bunch of legal issues around the margins that will be interesting for a law class, but less interesting for us. But apparently this has become the cause célèbre, on top of everything else, has become the cause célèbre of the town. And it drew, and once it was publicized, and apparently, everyone says Twitter is dead, but apparently Twitter managed to rouse everyone, including us, to this story. The interest in this story was so great that when they had a meeting this past Tuesday, I'm sorry, the first teleconference.
The hearing?
yeah, the teleconference municipal court hearing this past Tuesday, there were so many people who tried to get online that the prosecutor was unable to log in.
Oh, that is perfect.
That is just perfect. But you know, this actually raised. So what do you think? Before I go into my last little spiel about this, yeah, there's a little bit of what is it called, comeuppance
Oh, there
here
you go.
for the person, you know. So this is like a morality tale in a sense, but it's actually more a tale about the way in which we have the basis of our social relations in now I'm going to go completely abstract, in liberal democracy, is both individually oriented, right? Individual self-actualization, but is actually, for the most part, elaborated through markets and market relationships. So we value things, we weigh and balance things on the basis of value. We quibble about what value is in all of this, but we tend everything from our tort law to the way in which we choose or not choose to do or to do or not do certain things, the way in which we choose how, for what we will part with objects that we may either make or control or whatever, is all grounded in this notion of valuation. And that inherent in that is that notions of absolute prohibition tend to be viewed as limiting cases, and that if in fact you have systems where and where things are prohibited, but the penalty is a value-based penalty, what you've done is acceded to a markets-oriented mentality for figuring out effectively how much resources you're going to devote and how much resources someone is going to have to part with, assuming that they're going to violate the law. So they're markets, in a sense, or
Oh, that's
valuation
absolutely
mechanisms,
right. I
right?
mean, that's how you decide to that's part of the law, isn't it? I mean, you have to figure
Right.
out incentives for people to do things.
Right. And, you know, and this is as old as prostitution. It was, you know, it was common knowledge that a lot of the personal crimes like prostitution and the like, the people engaged in sex work would be arrested, they'd be fined. You know, every once in a while you'd have a prosecutor or a judge who'd go all Old Testament on them and jail them, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, so basically it was a cost of doing business. And for this person, you know, a cost of self-actualization. He looked at essentially the price. How much is it going to cost me to violate the law at $32,000? I can afford this, and the view is worth more than $32,000. So from the perspective of economics, as a rational actor, this makes perfect sense.
Except, if he is so privileged and, rich, having all this money, I don't understand why he didn't hire a lawyer to ensure he was following.
The fact that you're privileged doesn't mean that you're also, I mean, look,
Smart. Okay, yes, I get it.
how shall we say, people choose to spend their money in a variety of different ways. A person who will think nothing of spending $7,000 for a handbag may think twice about buying a loaf of bread because the price went up $1 at the store. So,
You're
you
right.
know,
It's irrational. Irrationality.
it's rational given a individual
In their minds, yes.
system.
If you're
In context, it may be rational. For the rest of us, you're completely out of your mind. Right. But there are two things that are going on here. And with that, I will woof out of this. And I want to hear more from you. All right. The first is, when you have that kind of market system, almost invariably, this kind of thing will happen from time to time. That is, you miss value. And here, he didn't do his homework, or the family didn't do their homework. Yeah, the price per tree is up to $32,000, but he forgot to read the other part, which then added a little wrinkle for the risk and the cost to him of having to do this. And even worse, because at this point, the state got you. Because not only do you have to pay the fine for the trees, but now you're going to have to replace them, which is even worse, because now that view is going to be $1.5 million view of the trees you just bought, right?
Yeah,
To
the neighbor has to put up with you
right, right. But the
going
second,
in his
right, the
property
second,
and
right, right. But let me just do the second one, and then I want to hear from you. Sir,
no, okay.
I just got to get this off my chest. All right.
Uh-huh.
So the second one is a larger issue for policy, and here we're dealing with sustainability, right? And we're talking about ultimately in the biggest picture, it's climate, climate change, and the like. If in fact we have a system that is grounded on these kind of market and market oriented sensibilities, and if in fact it is possible to value things out and then to choose um, to do something that goes against the object of the rule, and in this case it's to reduce carbon footprint or the like, or to lower temperature, then for those who are looking to use law and policy as a way of absolutely positively guaranteeing something is going to get done, no trees get cut down, that becomes problematic. And so the law becomes an inefficient law. Grounded in this kind of sensibility becomes inefficient for people who think that I can make a law that says, right, you can't engage in sex work, right? And so you think, aha, I've made that law, and now I've stopped sex work. I'm using the prostitute example just to drive the point home that this is an old thing. And then the sex workers say, oh, but look, it's a $500 fine. I'll just build that in. So actually, what you're telling me is not that I can't do sex work. You're telling me that as and when the state rouses itself or someone else rouses themselves to tag me for it, it's going to cost me $500.
Yeah, this is the price of doing
Right.
business,
And so, right.
basically.
But so if you've got things like human rights, you're dealing with human trafficking, or you're dealing with environmental and sustainability issues, or you're dealing, the classic is discharging pollutants into streams. But that what you're going to be doing is be fined. Fining really is a good thing, but either you're going to have to make the fines work towards a system of compliance, of absolute compliance, or you're going to have to rework your compliance in order to get to meet the objective. Otherwise, essentially what you've done is you continue the process of aligning law to markets and marketplace expectations.
Well, I don't see how you can't, how that wouldn't happen if you're involving fines or money at all. I mean, people are going to inherently use that to value the actions that they take. So basically, the law is they put the value on it.
Is there no escape?
Of course, there's always an escape, change the law. But
To
this is
do
how
what?
we've
But
decided. This is
that's what
what
I was
we've,
hoping you'd say. Wait. Okay. So
okay.
let's follow this. So you're going to change the law. All right, change the law, my puppy. How are you going to change the law?
Well, that's what that's what I was going to ask you. If we don't find and we're trying to get, or if we do find and we're trying to get them closer to some kind of compliance, how would we make people comply? Take something else away?
Well, yeah, like their liberty. So one way of doing it is to say, okay, we're going to use the criminal law rather than rather than have like civil penalties. For every tree you cut down, you're going to spend 10 years in jail.
Well, yeah, basically because I mean, I think that would work.
Well,
But would it?
except you're going to have another scandal. So this dude cuts down 32 trees. He's going to spend 32, no, how many years? 10 years for every tree.
He
That's
can afford
300,
bail.
300 until he gets sentenced. 300, and it's a no discretionary sentence. Let's assume he's going to spend 320 years in jail, and then there's going to be an uproar. Why is there going to be an uproar? Because that effort to really make it impossible for him to rationally want to cut down those trees may then in its sentencing violate another core principle that we have in most countries, and that's a principle of proportionality. And certainly proportionality in sentencing is going to be hard to convince the American people that this family ought to spend 320 years in jail because they had the temerity to cut down 32
Well,
trees.
then isn't that the job of the judge in the situation to judge
Yeah.
the appropriate?
Eh.
within the
the
law.
maybe. I mean, the other way to do it is beyond doing liberty is you can confiscate their property.
No, that would be the worst.
But again, you've got a proportionality issue. And in a sense, that brings me back to the ordinance. In a sense, what the ordinance did in the what was it, 8614? Yeah, 18614 is probably the best thing, the most reasonable thing you can do, which is, yeah, we're going to fine you, but the real trick to make you comply is we're going to force you. We don't care how much it costs. It's on you. You took the risk. We're going to force you to put things back the way they were. Now you can do that in a sense, yeah. And maybe the only other thing you can do is, yeah, we're going to force you to put things back the way they were, but of course they're not going to be immediately the same as they were. And so in addition to the $1,000 fine per tree, we may also fine you the amount of cost or decrease in quality of life that you're cutting the tree down and us waiting for them to grow back represents, assuming
Yeah,
you can do the
basically
calculus.
plus interest is what
Right. So
we're
you're
saying.
making society whole as well as making the other property owner whole. We've
Of
tried
course,
the
that doesn't
criminal.
work though if somebody doesn't read the entire
Well,
ordinance.
now it doesn't matter whether he reads it or not. He's stuck with it. But we've had this problem before. Recall back in the 18th century, the notion that if you violated, the the preferred sentence for violating common law, criminal law is death or transportation. And at some point, everyone says, "Oh my God, this is absolutely improportional." It's not proportionate, but people are saying, well, it really does guarantee that you really have to be either unbelievably unlucky or dumb or whatever to break the law. That's the whole point of having these outrageous penalties. But society ultimately never buys that. So using the penal power of the state is probably not realistic. But if the state really, really feels strongly, or society feels really strongly through the state, probably the replacement, the making things whole, and maybe then that little extra thing beyond the fine, which is punitive damages, but the recovery of damages, not just to your neighbor, but to the community, might be the way to go. Easier with trees. What happens when all kinds of other things happen? Water pollution, trafficking, exploiting workers.
Yeah, and the other fallout, like what if what you did to that person's property actually caused more damage, or down the road is makes the property itself, the neighbor's property, less valuable.
Yeah. All right. So do you have any problem with this family having to pay the 1,500 the $1.5 million cost?
No, but they should be doing more than that. Like you said, I think it's a great idea to have to put it back to where it was. But the unfortunate reality of that is you're forcing the neighbors to work it out
Ah,
when,
thank you. Thank you. Well, but that's really the question. So the way the ordinance, that's really the last question. And then I am going to go woof woof. Here, you've got two possible controllers or drivers of this system. The first is the family that actually suffered the loss, which is the family that owns the property where the 32 trees were cut down. And it could be, and like you were suggesting, if the law was meant to protect the other property owner who was damaged directly, then yeah, we go back to our market sensibility, and maybe because we now know that it's going to cost $1.5 million just to build the road to plant the trees, the neighbor will go, and it may be, if you could buy that entire next door property for 2 million, it might be just cheaper to buy the property and then figure out how you're going to do the trees, or you settle it
yes.
somehow. But that only works if the law is written solely for the protection of the harmed property owner. But this one, It's not written that way. In this case, the harmed party, there are two harmed parties. The first harmed party is the property owner whose trees were cut down, right? But the second party that was harmed was the borough.
Yeah, the greater good,
Right.
basically.
Right. And so when you look at the purpose and intent, to preserve and protect trees within the borough, which helps preserve water quality, abate noise, enhance the ambience and character of the community. So now it's and enhance the semi-rural character, blah, blah, blah. This is 186.1. At that point, the state will come in, the government. I know it's a borough, but I'll use the term state in terms of a public organ. Will come in and say, well, look, only part of the damage was suffered by the property owner. The other part was by the people of the borough. And with respect to that damage, the property owner who was harmed has nothing to say. That is, has no authority to act on behalf of the borough in settling the case. And the borough may say, well, look, we don't really care. You're going to have to do what it takes to put those 32 trees down, even if the harmed owner might have said, okay, I feel really bad about it. Why don't you just buy me an all expenses month-long cruise along the Rhine?
Yeah, so this takes away their liberty to make their decision, the decision about.
Right. And so that becomes another interesting wrinkle in all of these things. So you've got this market thing, which works really well if it's private, and then that gets upended if the harmed party is actually the people represented by the state and its institutions. All right, I'm woof woof here.
Yeah, I'm barked out. That just, I mean, that goes to show you, if you got all the money in the world,
Right.
you can
Well,
still
and
be
all
an
right,
idiot.
well, almost woof woof. And of course, the last thing
Oh,
is, sorry, and I've got to do
I
this.
knew it. I knew it. I knew
No,
it.
there had to be the right, and it goes to why we're talking about this, the power of social media, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But it has two effects here. One is that it got a whole lot of people interested. This was getting hundreds of thousands of hits. Everyone is looking at this, which means that probably the state, someone is going to, in addition to the borough and the individual who's harmed, is going to find something in here that may be of value to them in enhancing a career, in developing legislative
Oh,
findings,
yes. They'll go
whatever.
after.
Right. That's sort of number one, which makes this very interesting. But the second thing is that, in fact, when you look at this, what this does is put the borough in a very awkward spot, because even if the borough might have now been inclined to settle themselves, with all of this, with America watching, it's not just America, with the world watching, and with everyone more than willing to do a play-by-play, again, they nearly crashed
Yeah, they
the
have to take
hearing
that into
system.
consideration when.
Now, right, the scope of their discretion, if they value their longevity in office, is now going to be circumscribed, so that, in a sense, social media is now acting to
The enforcer.
curb, right, to curb in ways that would have been unthinkable maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Now, really, woof woof.
Okay, I believe you because I'm gonna cut it off. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time. If you celebrate 4th of July, happy 4th of July.
No.
If not, don't worry about it.
Woof
Thanks
woof.
everyone. Bark,
Woof
bark.
woof.